This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Imagine closing deals with a single sentence. And picture rallying your team with unwavering conviction. That's the power of communication. It's the ability to command attention and inspire action. And for business owners and executives, these skills are not just nice to haves, they are essential tools for building their businesses. In today's episode of The Bottom Line, we're joined by Jonathan Pease, an expert in helping individuals and businesses master the art of communication. JP is the founder of Winning the Room, a program designed to equip leaders and business owners with the tools they need to captivate their audience. We'll dive deep into JP's world, exploring the core principles of public speaking and discovering how it empowers leaders. You'll learn why public speaking is more than just presentation skills and find out how you can craft compelling pitches and inspire action with confidence. JP will also share actionable tips and practical wisdom for anyone who wants to take their communication skills to the next level and win the room every time. Let's dive in. Hi JP, thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today. I've gone straight into the initials JP. So Jonathan Pease, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, man. Great to be here. Look, I'm a creative, but I have a serious passion for pitching and presenting. And 4 kids, lovely wife, live in Byron Bay and Sydney, sort of a foot in both cities.
I'm looking forward to the chat. Look, in terms of communication, it's an interesting one. We all have to communicate, right? And we learn to speak. As you've got 4 kids, you know, your first point of action is you're watching those kids. Yep, they got to crawl and walk. But once they get to a certain age, you get excited about their speech. But before we get into that, dive into your background. How did you get into helping businesses pitch, communication, public speaking? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Look, if we rewind back 30 years, I was 20. I was heading to New York, the land of orators, the land of presenters, and I was absolutely scared out of my mind when it came to presenting, right? I mean, I was terrible at it. I knew it, and I would do whatever I could to get out of it. Now, keep in mind, I was a junior in advertising, so no one really cared if I presented, just as long as I did my work and then someone else could go and present. And look, I carried on like this for maybe 18 months, and I figured that's just be how I did it. Then my mentor got replaced, and the new guy who was basically going to run the whole business, keep in mind this was an agency called BBDO, arguably best agency at the world. So this was a serious guy that was moving on and a serious guy that was coming in. And the new guy, I'll just use his name as Andrew. I won't give you the full name. His name was Andrew. He turned up to a meeting of about 1,200 of us in a location and spoke for no more than 8 minutes. And he took everyone from where they were, which was addicted to the guy before, addicted to the old strategy, to completely Team Andrew in 8 minutes. And I watched this happen, and the penny dropped for me where I was like, you know what? Number one, I cannot avoid this anymore. And number 2, I need to start observing people around me because I am surrounded by great pitchers. And that is really where this started. So my day job was creative, and it still is today. But my real passion is trying to figure out, what do great presenters do? How do some ideas get up and other ideas don't? Why do some businesses get invested in and others don't? Often it's actually not down to the price or the product or the service. Often it comes down to how it was articulated and how it was pitched. So fast forward to today, I've now built a whole methodology around this. I've written a book. I train all sorts of interesting people, whether it be executives, people on TV, sports people, others, about how to really make those moments to pitch or present to someone else that you want to say yes, how to make those moments great and go your way, hence the title of the book and my program, Winning the Room.
What I love about the word pitch, when you use the word pitch, you normally just think you're selling something. But in everything we do, we're selling something, right? I had a phone call literally 10 minutes before this podcast, and I had to sell. I had to convince someone, not necessarily to do what I wanted them to do for me, but understand why it's in their benefit to go down a particular path. And it was just an employee discussion, but it was really a pitch. And it was important for me. I had to make sure that phone call ended for the greater good of our business, the way that I needed that person to behave and do what I generally wanted them to do. And it wasn't about telling. They needed to believe in what I was trying to say. And that was a pitch. We're pitching all the time, right? And leaders, when they pitch their strategy to the team, and in that example you gave with the 8 minutes, he wasn't selling a product, he was selling a vision or strategy. So it's such a powerful tool or skill to have, but it's very little invested and very little written about it. So take us deeper into that. Was there content that you needed to go to? We don't teach this at school, that's for sure. A little bit we do, but where did you sort of get your ideas and you put it together? And was it all your work in terms of seeing all the experiences that you've had, you've put it into your own world?
I just want to come back to the first bit around that word pitch. And you're right. I think there's a lot of negative connotations around pitch because it sounds like you are going to convince, brackets, maybe manipulate the audience into doing something, maybe even against their better judgment or against their will. That's obviously the wrong way to act in life and in business. So what you then went on to say is actually, I believe, the perfect balance, which is how might I add the most value to the audience or the person that I'm presenting or pitching to, right? So it's not about sell, sell, sell. It's actually about value. How do I add that value? And that could be in the way I explain it, could be in the product itself, it could be in the stories I tell. So that's just a fundamental shift because a lot of people turn up to me wanting to know how to sell. And yes, at the end, we're looking for agreement or buy-in or investment, but I think we need to move away from selling and more around adding value. And that actually has a lot of other side benefits. For example, it can really dissolve nerves because it's actually not about you. It's about you being a guide to add value. And I know that's a slight nuance, but being able to step slightly one to the right of the content and then guide your audience, show them the value and agree together, that's a very, very different construct than please buy this for these reasons. Come on, let's go. It's just a completely different way of having a conversation. But let's get to your real question, which was, did I make all this stuff up? Did I steal it all? Where did I get it from? The truth is a combination, right? So back when I was a terrible presenter and when I realized I needed to do it, the first thing I did was I just started sitting in meetings and observing great pitches and great presenters and writing it down. Again, I was in New York. I had an incredible boss. He was an amazing pitcher. I mean, he could sell anything to anyone. So really the foundation of this was writing down his habits, what he did, how he explained things, and then other people, and then our clients. And it sort of spread like that, right? So I had all this observations and information I wrote down. I then started doing formal courses. So I did a bunch of courses in New York. I did a few in LA, and then actually started experimenting with different things. So I did an NLP course. I actually went to the Church of Scientology and did their communications course and a series of other weird and wonderful things that I won't bore you with. But the point is, I took all of this input and I kind of simmered it down into 30 modules, which became a workshop that I used to do with my own teams at my own agency once I'd progressed to that point and I had my own agency. And then I started doing it with my clients, and then I wrote the book, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, I think I came up with some of it, but a vast majority of it is borrowed, collected, stolen from other great people. And it's been curated. Well, I mean, I think this is really the difference. It's been curated into something which is highly actionable and road tested. And to me, that is the difference between what I do and what else is out there. I'm not a coach. I'm not a teacher. I'm a practitioner, right? I pitch every day at least once. I love it. And I work with teams who pitch every day. So we are road testing this material every single day. And also we've designed it so it can be actionable, because we need to grab and go with these tips and techniques. Theory doesn't really do much for me and my teams, my clients. So to me, that's the real difference. Collected from around the world, from interesting people, but put into a sequence which is really actionable and really road tested.
So, Winning the Room, the program, what are the core principles of the program, and how does it differ from the executive training programs that sort of is out there that teaches executives about just general training?
Look, I think there's lots of differences. Again, those two fundamentals, really actionable, which is easy to say, actually quite hard to deliver. Again, when I went around doing a bunch of courses here and internationally, often I was left with the feeling of, look, that was great in the program, it was great, and I got something out of it on the day. How might I now apply that to my next meeting, to my next big pitch moment? There was always a disconnect there. So I think the actionable bit is big, and it's a big difference. We also work with a really simple, I guess you'd call it a methodology, which is CLAIM. So these are the 5 attributes of any great presenter or pitcher. So confident, likable, authentic, influential, and memorable. They're the 5 traits or characteristics that we aim to get firing in any person we work with, whether it be an individual or team. So those 5 things. And some of these feel obvious, like confidence. Yeah, no doubt, need to be confident. But how do you actually cultivate your own confidence? 1, but 2, how do you then demonstrate that confidence to an audience? And there is a difference, right? I meet lots of executives who are subject matter experts, lots and lots of confidence, but when they present, they don't come off as confident, right? They don't get to demonstrate that confidence. Therefore, the people they're working with maybe don't believe them, maybe don't trust them, maybe can't go on that journey or that investment cycle with them because just the confidence wasn't there. Anyway, the point is there's sort of 2 parts to it. And each of those ideas, likability, authenticity, etc., they all have different aspects. Some are things that you might find elsewhere, and other pieces are what I believe to be unique to Winning the Room.
For people that buy your book and read it, initially when you're speaking just then, it feels like it's something you need to stand in front of a mirror and practice and coach. And it's something that it feels like, how do you coach a tennis player to learn how to play tennis by reading a book, right? It feels like learning to speak well is something that you need to be shown. Someone watches you, gives you feedback. Talk us through the book, because it would be an amazing book if you get it right. I'm sure you've done great things with the book, but talk us through reading the book and how does it solve the fact that live feedback and speaking is about sort of that learning as you're doing.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a skill set, right? So it's something that needs to be learned, but then practiced. There's no 2 ways around it. A lot of executives tell me they don't have time to rehearse. And I understand I'm often time poor and think I can't rehearse, but then I know the consequences. So I make time. And often my challenge to executives is, well, if you don't have time to rehearse, is this really important enough to present? Maybe it's a great email. Maybe it's a great document that you leave behind. And then when they say, well, no, actually, we definitely have to present it or pitch it, great. Well, then we definitely have to rehearse and practice. So where does the book fit in with that? Well, the book unpacks a bunch of knowledge, new ideas, again, all actionable. But then the onus is on the reader to work the muscle, right? You got to get out there and do it. And you mentioned doing it in front of a mirror. Yeah, look, I think that's better than not doing it at all, but certainly in front of a live audience is where you really need to get to with your rehearsals. So that's about friends, family, colleagues, hopefully getting to role play the real audience that you're going to be actually presenting to, and going through a rotation of doing it. I think optimal would be 5. And I know most people, most executives at least, say they don't have time. So maybe they get to 3, as in 3 full dress rehearsals in front of a live audience, role playing and giving you Q&A. Look, if you do that just once, you'll feel the difference. and you'll realize the importance of it and hopefully create a new habit.
What are some of the things that you see are the most common things that people do wrong when they're pitching or speaking in front of an audience that our listeners can go, oh, geez, I did that. So what are some of the common things that people can quickly adjust that you can give us some tips on that you shouldn't do that gets done a lot?
The first one is most people that I run into think they need to assimilate to the meeting or the moment. And what I mean by that is they think they need to fit in and basically not stick out. It's more sort of socially comfortable. It feels like the intuitive way, that'll probably make me more likable, et cetera, et cetera. So as a result, they end up being slightly forgettable, maybe even unremarkable. And that's not something that is intuitive. It's not something that's natural. So it's something that you need to design. So I guess the first tip is, as you're heading towards a meeting in the diary that's coming up, start to think about, well, what's the tone going to be like? And what are they expecting? And how might I reframe that in the first 30 seconds of the meeting to let this audience know this is different. This is worth listening to. There are consequences, good and bad. If you can set that up in the first 30 seconds, you'll be able to grab and hold attention. What you then do with that attention comes down to the rest of the book, which is basically be confident, likable, authentic, influential, and memorable. But if you do all that without grabbing attention up front, it's just going to be falling on deaf ears anyway. So that's probably the first thing I would say. Then the second thing would be around pace. Most of us, myself included, especially when nerves are kicking in, I speak too fast, right? Most people speak too fast. Again, how do you design pausing in and also pacing into your presentation so you can really walk through at the right pace? So pace is actually part of what you're communicating. And what I mean by that is a big deliberate pause. Well, that creates drama. That creates importance for what you're next going to say. You probably just heard then I changed the cadence of the way I was presenting. And that is to draw it out and let people understand, hey, this is key. Please listen. Pick up a pen, write it down. These things I'm about to say to you are not part of my everyday run-of-the-mill conversation that I'm going to be having. This is the moment. Anyway, probably badly done, but you get the point. Pacing and pausing can be used as part of your communication, not just how I space out an hour meeting. It can actually be used as part of the communication when done well.
And what about visuals? Talk us through visuals. I'm not sure if you're an Entourage fan, the TV show on HBO. I'll never forget the episode where all the agencies had to present to the main actor to become their agency, right? It was really funny. They all did the exact same thing and they all did the exact same pitch, the same visuals, and it was just a copy and paste. And they're like, what is going on here? So I distinctly remember in that particular episode, there were really cool visuals. They turned down the lights, the music came on board. How important are visuals and drama and sound to amplify the memorable part of maybe the public speaking? And talk us through how important that is.
Yeah, so visuals are powerful, but they're dangerous because they can be quite lazy, right? And that Entourage example is a perfect example of lazy. People know that visual communication is powerful, right? We remember visuals. A great visual can say 1,000 words, as the old adage goes. But if it's not a terrific visual, if it's low res, if it's expected, if it feels formulaic, I think it can actually erode a lot of good stuff in your presentation. So I guess my point is, yes, visuals are powerful, but make sure they're excellent and make sure they're really targeted and potent. So if you've got 20 minutes, don't jam it up with 20 visuals. Maybe have 3 incredible ones that really, really nail it. And probably, again, back to that idea of changing tone and shifting the mood in the room. If you want to say something about the environment, don't use a typical shot that would be used to say something about the environment. Maybe use something really different. Like maybe it's the back of, I'm trying to remember her name, that young environmental campaigner,
Ah, yeah, the one on the boat.
Greta Thunberg.
Greta Thunberg, that's it.
So imagine just using a close-up of her plaited hair, for example, as the visual, which you then explain after saying all the stuff about the environmental stuff. People are looking at the visual going, what is this visual? And be like, well, actually, whatever, it's about the future. That's actually Greta's hair. For a terrible example, but you get my point. It's not a forest of trees. It's not a landfill shot, right? It's something different that makes people think, that holds attention, that they can talk about after the meeting. So the point is, visuals are great if they're great, and they're really lazy if they're not thought out properly.
In your business, other than the book, you obviously run workshops. Is it one-on-one consulting and stuff like that?
Yeah, so look, it's a combo. I mean, I do group workshops at the sort of ASX 50 style company where it's groups of executives. And that's usually like 3 sessions. I then usually go individual off the back of that with certain people that either feel like they need one-on-one or they're really amped by the content and want to get really excellent. So I then often go one-on-one with those individuals. That's usually how it rolls. But look, I mean, every engagement is completely about what is your outcome? Like, what are you trying to do? So, for your real estate example, whatever the specific outcome that person or that business is looking for, we would then design a program that hits and exceeds that outcome. So yes, we have those 30 modules, but we kind of remix them based on what people are trying to achieve.
As a communicator, Jonathan, and an expert in this field, what are your thoughts on sort of that evolving landscape of communication in today's digital age? We're on Zoom right now, right? And I know in the old days when we started the podcast, I don't think I did a Zoom podcast within the first 20 days. So things have changed. People are communicating on text at the moment. People are doing Zooms and it's really evolved and evolved very fast. How has that changed the communication landscape, and what are your thoughts on the future and what we need to be doing?
It's a great question. One of the reasons why I wrote the book was I felt like public speaking, i.e. one-to-many communication, will be about the last thing that AI can do better than us, I reckon. Maybe the last. So it felt like a skill that everybody needed. Again, from my experience of meeting lots of people, lots of senior people, they haven't necessarily had the training. So really that was the mission of the book, was really to share at least the start of the journey, getting people to think, actually, I need to get better. Let me try some of the stuff from this book. And then where they take it from there is really up to them, how much they're going to practice, how much time they put to it, like any skill, right? So look, I think we're basically getting eked out by AI at the moment. Sure, we'll find other things to do, but I do think that this type of stuff is about the last thing they can do. And that's because it really does come down to human connection. One to one or one to many. At the end of the day, we are trying to build rapport, trust, and eventually get on the same page together and hopefully go somewhere together, whether it be an investment journey, a culture journey, a philanthropy journey, whatever that journey is, but it's something that you want one or a few people to come with you on. I don't know, I'm not sure AI and computers can do that, at least not for a long, long while.
Definitely not. Unless your boyfriend is an AI robot, I think you're going to stick to humans definitely for that. But the other thing that's been really going out a lot on social media and stuff that I've been seeing is around storytelling and the art and the skill of storytelling. How important is storytelling in the work that you do and how important it is in pitching?
Look, stories are the easiest way for people to retain what you're going to tell them, right? So if you have a list of facts or a list of observations and you tell people that list, even if you put it into sentences, that is not as memorable as creating a story with an arc that allows all of those things to play a role in that story. And again, I mean, this is scientifically proven. It probably also feels like, yeah, I get it. That makes sense to most people and most listeners. So if you believe that, the job becomes, at least in the executive world, how do you tell a story that makes sense for the business whilst being able to put your own personal touch on it? And a lot of the work we do is about that. What are the business implications for this? And how do I connect to it personally, to make it authentic, to make it believable, to allow me to put my own personality into it so I can influence others. So it's those two bits, because a truly personal story, as cute as it may be, probably won't have much business impact. A truly business story with no personal, well, it won't feel that authentic. It won't really feel like that executive's got much to do with it. Probably won't get the extra effort and the true follow through. So yeah, we're always looking for how do we bridge that gap and tell stories that can weave those two elements together.
Now, there's some amazing public speakers out there that we see on TV and so on. Can you tell us who is your favorite public speaker, dead or alive? Who do you look up to and go, every time I see him on stage, he absolutely nails it and does everything that you teach?
Look, I mean, I would never say this person does everything I teach, even though I have worked with them. So there's a guy by the name of Ray Dalio. He's a big investor. Most people know who he is. I really love the way he presents because I can tell by the way he presents, and I know from spending a small amount of time with him, he's all about the value he can add to other people. But it's his true motivation, and it comes through in absolutely everything he does. The design of his slideware, the way he writes his books, the way he presents on a stage, the way he does an interview, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, I mean, I've got so many people that I love and look up to in this area, but when it comes to the way I've written the book and the way I've structured the courses, I think Ray Dalio would kind of be our Mick Jagger, if you will, our kind of rock star that we look up to.
Let's get back to the book. So tell us about the person. I've bought the book. Give us a bit of an insight on what the book will be like for a reader. What will we get? Is it a quick read? Is it a set out in examples? What's the pitch? Because as soon as I get off this call, I'm buying the book, and you've definitely influenced me to buy it. It's the next thing that I'm going to read. So take us through the journey of the book and what the reader should expect.
So I was offered a book publishing deal by a US company who had done my training course, right? So they'd been through the 30 modules. They said, hey, this should be a book. And I said, terrific, give me a deal and I'll write it. They, fortunately, unfortunately said, fine, go write it. So what I did was at first, I basically wrote up the 30 modules, put it in between a cover and a back cover and said, here you go, guys, there's my submission. And they swiftly knocked it back, correctly so, saying, no, that's like a list or a textbook. We're looking for a story. We're looking for a real book, not a textbook. So I then sort of went back to square one and made it much more anecdotal, a lot more examples. I'd like to believe a lot more personal, and still retained the 30 modules because I want people to be able to read the book and change their performance immediately, right? Literally, next time they present, they will be a margin better from reading the book. And then as they practice, they will get better and better and better. That is my 100% mission with the book. So retained the 30 modules. And actually that idea of claim, that came up during the process because I had these 30 modules and then I had this moment of genius where I thought, oh my God, they break into these 5 categories. And those 5 categories are exactly what you need to be exhibiting and believing when you pitch. Anyway, so I hope that answers your question. It's personal, it's raw, it's a story, but it's potent, it's minimal on the waffle, and it's stuff you can use.
Can you give our listeners a quick little actionable tip that they can implement today to improve their presentation skills? So say someone's listening to this and they're about to pitch. What's one thing that you can quickly say to them, a word of advice that will make that pitch better than it would otherwise have been?
So it's called tight loose. You learn the content as tight as humanly possible. You do dress rehearsals. You figure out where your anecdotes are going to drop. You practice Q&A. You have got this content tight as tight can be. The night before, you throw away the notes and you present it loose, no notes. Now, what will happen is your points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, will probably come out 1, 3, 4, 2, 5, i.e. out of order. But the benefit you get, it feels live, it feels charismatic, feels like it's the first time you're presenting it. It also allows lots of room for vulnerability, conversation, personality, all the real reasons that you're in the room, right? Most of us are not in the room because of the factual stuff we're bringing. We're in the room because of ourselves, right? We need to shine the light on that, less on the slideware, less on the points, more on you and your personality and what you can bring.
I love that. I have to say, being the managing partner of our accounting firm, I do a lot of presentations to the team. And for whatever reason, I really struggle to take notes because I know what I want to say. I know my vision so well. I know the audience. I know what I'm going to tell them. And I find I never struggle presenting anything without having the notes. And you're right. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth, but at a high level, I know why we're at the meeting. I know what I'm trying to sell. I know what the topic's about, but I just go out there and do it. And I feel like it's always better, but it's taken years of experience and years of knowing what I want out of it to come through. It is fun. Even the podcast, when I first launched it, it's really interesting. Would have 10 questions and literally it'd be question after question after question. And sometimes the seventh question I can't ask because it's the guy's already either answered it previously or whatnot. And I'd get stuck. Now, after, 80 episodes, the questions sometimes just go out the window. And I'm like, I've got this because I know the topic. And it just makes for a better episode when we chat. But you really need to know your stuff really well. And then it comes out authentic. I really love that advice. And as business owners, we know our products, our service offering, our value so well. We just need to keep practicing and refining it so that we're confident enough to do it without the notes and the PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff. So great advice there. I think I can talk to you about presenting and so on for so long. But I'm going to go back to the 4 kids. I've got 2 of my own. I have to say it's such a life skill to be able to present because it's so important. For all the people that are listening today that are parents, what advice do you have to parents? And what can we do and teach to our kids? And what advice can we give them to be better presenters as juniors and so on? So what do you say to your kids to make them better?
I know I've got 4 kids, but I'm not sure I know anything about parenting. I often scoff at people that give parenting advice because I reckon it's about as opaque a task as it could be. But what do I do with my kids? And of course, I'm obsessed by this subject matter. So of course, I'm trying to create 4 amazing public speakers. Look, it's as simple as I get them to practice and exercise it, right? So, and I know a lot of people do this, but we do a little stories, what was a highlight, low light, and a buffalo before dinner. And we all talk about that. Everyone goes around the table and has their little moment. I make sure that if my kids want something, they need to present to me and convince me why. So for example, my son just got a snake for Christmas, a python, and he has been petitioning and pitching for this snake for 2 years. And only when he convinced me and my wife, truly, did he get it. And they know that. They know that if they want something, they're going to need to pitch us and convince us.
That is the parenting tip, Jonathan. That's the one, because I love that. I think that's a really good way of teaching young kids as early as when they can speak, where they don't even know they're being taught that skill. It's like, okay, pitch it. And you can give live feedback being an expert, and we can always do that. That is the parenting tip. I love that. I'm going to use that.
The big wild world out there, right? No one's going to give anybody a handout. So we all need to be thinking this way and pitching well. And it is a habit, right? It's something that took me until I was 22 to really start getting my head around. I wish I'd been forced to do more of it when I was younger. It was a real fish out of water moment for me, turning up in New York, being surrounded by really unbelievable pitches, sitting in this meeting just going, wow, I am off the pace. I have no clue. And I really want to dig a hole right now and jump in it. I'm sure if I'd practiced as a kid, I would have been at least less nervous and less out of sorts.
Now, for those that are intrigued to learn more about your work and how you support business owners, take us through sort of how you deliver your service other than the book, and maybe where they can actually get the coaching and the workshops through your business.
Thanks. Yes. Look, I mean, I do workshops, usually with sort of 10 to 12 people. Just by the nature of my clients, it's usually executives. So ELT level, usually, sometimes boards. And we work on the content and then we work on the delivery of that content. So that's my normal way of doing what I do. So they're workshops. Usually we do a series of 3, and then I often go one-on-one with certain individuals that are either really leaned into the content and want to get better, or people that are just excellent and just want to get that extra bit on top. So usually I do some one-on-one after that. I've also got an online course, which is a bit more accessible from a price point of view. But look, to be honest, this is something I'm very passionate about. If people are interested and they just want to have a conversation with me, I would totally invite them to reach out. It's something I love talking about. I love hearing stories. I love learning from other people that are learning this stuff. It keeps me sharp. So I'm opening all floodgates. It's not all about getting paid. I'd be happy to have chats with anyone that's interested in this subject matter.
JP, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. It was fascinating to hear your insights and expertise, and I just want to say thank you so much for your time and expertise.
A real pleasure, and I definitely enjoyed it. Thank you.
This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952, and we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Savan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.